Welcome to episode 8. 8's an interesting number for this episode in that 8 is the best numerical representation of infinity. So, anyway, where we left you last in the time horizon in 2005 of my life was, well, I started going crazy on camera, went back into the cuckoo's nest, asked the shrink a few questions, spent out 6 days, saw the sign I told you about, be the author of your own life story, and I conceived of who is the author of the future of Earth. And, well, that's an interesting science fiction, science faction story that's in its own creation anytime we should choose to create it. And, well, in my reality came out in the partners I had were a little off-put by my second visit through the cuckoo's nest. And so we really didn't go back to our little vision of finding little angel capital that's looking to make a bunch of money. I really needed bigger angels that was looking to make a world. Anyway, so those doubting Thomases and doubting Phils fell out of the story. And I fell out of my mind a little bit and then said, okay, let's reboot. What are we going to do again? And so I began to write. Bill Starr's the next big things. Is Bill Starr crazy? Or has he invented the next big things? Which I told you a little bit about in episode 7 of my story. And we'll tell you a little bit more about them today. But imagine this movie, if you will. This is the instantiation of not Atlas rising from the top to the bottom, but Atlas rising from the bottom to the top and taking over the world. And, well, this is a peaceful revolution beyond your mind. And it's perfectly within our power to conduct this revolution, and this is what I see, I viewed, I perceived, I prophesied back then. To conduct this revolution entirely on what you know as the internet, or what I knew as the future of the internet. But here's the dealio. I told you all of how we could buy a world of future. And in this story, Bill Starr becomes the prophet of prophets. And, well, it's a story of a TV show. Imagine a guy gets a TV show on the internet. And I told you about the notion of having stock in the enterprise of the future. So imagine you're invited to a TV show on the internet. And you're playing in real time on that show. And there's a guy on that show asking you questions. And every time you answer a question, even right or wrong, click, 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 you get little stars in your account. Click, 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 you get little stars in your account. And this Bill Starr asks leading questions to try to Socratically lead you to truths. Truths that we really know. Truths that we sometimes don't accept. But along the way, we describe and get to the next big things. And as I told the wise kids, or asked them, because that's sometimes the best way of learning. Of course, that's so old, back to Socrates. But here's the thing, and the Greeks should get credit. See, we took all their frickin' philosophy, sucked them all up, used them to build upon, and now the Greeks are screwed full of debt, and they get no credit for Socrates, because he's with Plato in the public domain. That's what happens with your stars when they depreciate. But anyway, so here's the thing. Okay. So you ask the questions, and through the process you learn. But through the process of paying stars, you get people invested in your enterprise. And so the first question, was, what was the last next big thing? Because unless you know the answer to what the last next big thing is, you could never postulate the answers to what lies beyond in the realm of next big things. So, simple, right? Okay, I don't think so. Okay. So when I asked these kids, the 3 wise kids, what was the last next big thing at the time? It's actually getting harder today. At the time in 2005, nobody questioned it. Was almost 75% of the answers was the internet. Well, those of you know what a thing of a thing the internet is. That's really big. Really, really big. Big beyond what normal people think. Way far beyond a wheel. So that creates the context by which you measure those things big. You see, you can't take a little toast and say this is the next big thing and have any credibility. A next big thing must be really big, as I described in the future. The next big things. What? Well, I described it last episode. We'll get to them later if we get to them at all in this episode. Okay, so if the last big thing was the internet, what was the next to the last big thing? And I tell you, it ties to the thing that comes a time or two after. And it's the time I call. I'll hold it for you. I'll tell you later. But it's the first of a time. That's the first of a part of a new paradigm. That's a part of new things getting bigger and different. Okay, so let's go through the things. And I go through them slowly on the show, week by week, so that we build up a momentum and we build up people in our sort of Facebook collection. So imagine if Facebook's the show, an interactive show where people are answering and trying to figure out the answer to the future and guessing and learning together about what are the big things. And so I postulated what was the first big thing that man invented. And I postulated, wait a second, before we can count to big thing 1, we must count to big thing 0. Before God, whoever that might be, or whatever creation that might have been. And there are ways to articulate it that goes beyond your traditional measures, not that I'm arguing those. But anyway, it could be the Big Bang, or God, but that's what I call big thing 0. 0 conquers any number, multiplied or divided. 0 is the mark to market of your future, and the future must realize, if you realize, the power of the next big thing, which is the first next big thing that man ever created. It was the power of 1. It was the first structure of power man created, when the powerful caveman used his fist in the club to get the best women in the best caves, became the tribal chief, and then the kings. And now we use different ways of creating kings with pieces of paper and power of politics. But the point is the same. Power is monopolized as the first of the next big things. Okay, so what was the next big thing beyond this structure that has driven our society since we could argue the beginning of time? Well, the next big thing, well, I saw it as travel. When we started traveling around, now you could you could argue whether one of the first of the next big things was housing and agriculture, but travel, because you'll find these next big things all have what's in common is a network effect. And I won't explain the network effect to you, but those who know the network effect can understand the disintermediating power of a really strong network effect. And that is the effect that I imagined occurring on the network of the minds in the world. With only 6 degrees of separation, you could separate every mind in the planet. But let's not go there yet. Okay, it's 9:15. We just passed 9:11 on the clock. I got 15 minutes. Okay, so here's the thing. Okay, big thing 2, travel. So we spread around to Marco Polo around the world. Started spreading our ideas. Big thing 3, back to those Greeks. Sparta created democracy. Probably the closest ever practice. We far from democracy now. We create publics. There's no such thing as democracy. Well, probably because we knew from the beginning of the American Revolution, when Alexis de Tocqueville wrote about democracy in America, he recognized democracy as tyranny. And I would argue that you could really clearly explain democracy unfettered is a tyranny of the stupid. And so, the kind of new enterprise that I envision is a combination of a democracy of power to people and power to capital, but a democracy that makes sure that we are not stupid. So, let's go on. So, 3 was democracy. Well, we could practice it someday. And then 4 was print. Now, actually, 800 AD or so, the Chinese invented print. Had a problem they had in computers in the beginning, and probably maybe still have it now with the keyboards and such. They had too many characters in their alphabet, and so it took hundreds of years and a dark ages later before Gutenberg invented print again, and invented it for the Gutenberg Bible, which became one of the most popular books until modern days, when, what's the most popular book today? I don't know, but Atlas Shrugged is way among them, but nowhere near the Bibles. But anyway, that's not the, it's all the points. But anyway, so 4 was the book. Again, a network effect of knowledge and information. Think about that. The print. Okay, so 5 was capitalism. What we've never really practiced right today. We've played with it, we've massaged it, and we've advanced it. But we've advanced a corrupt form of it, a form that is allowed to steal from our very customers. And when we allow enterprises from stealing their customers on the notion that buyer beware, wait a minute. That buyer is our consumer. When we conceal for our consumers, they can't consume. When we provide more value to the consumer, they can consume more value. And there's a new benevolent kind of enterprise that could take over the world if an enterprise shared its stock with all the people on earth, and an enterprise could print its own money. And so next big thing, 6. What was that in time? It was the engine. At the dawn of the Industrial Revolution. In fact, the engine is what powered the revolution of the Industrial Revolution. Only about 1600 BC. Think about that, 400 years ago. Big thing 6. And by the way, I tell you, the internet was 16, so we don't have many to go and 4 minutes left. And so I'll go through them quickly for you, just for context of the things. The next big thing after 6 I decoded was 7. See, I envisioned that Franklin found the power, and Edison turned it into light. Power and light. 7. It's a prime. So is 5 and 3 and 1. Okay, now to the infinite number of 8, which is very interesting to our network effect, because that's when the first, can you hear me now? Part of the real network effect started to see it. And that was Alexander Graham Bell who invented the telephone, big thing 8. But that wasn't over, because Marconi freed it with 9 wireless. So big thing 8 and big thing 9, and then big thing 10. What was big thing 10? Well, some of these names and numbers could be arbitrary because some of the times and developments overlapped. But I anointed Big Thing 10 as flat TV, because I view your future as real 3D in real time, with real reality played and space-time captured forward and backward, and that gets interesting. But in the wake of that, we go to Big Thing 11. 10 was flight, when man first flew at Kill Devil Hill with the Wolverine ride. And anyway, and then 11 was flat TV, and then 12. Well, 12, we'll leave you at this, was the doomsday clock. It was atomic power and the weapons that would destroy us. See, that was the 0. That was the number of the math. Now we have a few more things to get to 16, but as soon as we got an introduction to the zero number of gods, we realized a 0 and a 1 multiplied equals 0. A 0 and 7 billion equals 0. You could take all your money on earth and multiply or divide it times 0, and your result is the same. You're zeroed out to 0.